Welcome to Icon, everyone. My name's Dan, and I'm a pastor here, and I'm so glad to be here with you. It's so great to have so many of the kids up here on stage. Wasn't that awesome seeing the kids up here? Love that. I personally, maybe I'm a little weird. I always want something crazy to happen with one of the kids, like kid puke or something. You know, like I want it to be mixed up. So all the kids were good, unfortunately, but it's so great. To see the kids up here, to see families here together, to celebrate families. It's so great to have so many guests with us today. And actually, before jumping into the message, I want to highlight one special guest that's here with us. We're just going to wave at them, and it's Pastors Jesus and Emma. They're right up here. Go ahead and wave at us. That's Pastor Jesus and Emma. They're here all the way from Monclova, Mexico. What's unique about that is, give them a round of applause. Yes. Monclova, Mexico is where we'll be taking a team of people in about a month from now. We'll be going down to Mexico to their church to work with them. I've had a chance to get to know them, and they ended up being able to make it up here, and they're like, we'll be in church. And I was like, wait, like today? So we're thrilled to have them here with us. And so if you get a chance to introduce yourself, it'd be awesome. We will continue to partner with them through the coming months and years. So a great opportunity to connect if you have a chance after service. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into our brand new series that we're doing here for the next couple of weeks. And it's a series that we're calling Flourish. And as we were thinking about the purpose of this series, this word just kind of kept coming up to my mind as I studied and read, just kind of kept popping up, this idea of flourishing. Now, the reason this word kept coming up is because what we're talking about this Sunday and next Sunday is really what the mission of the church is, what our goal is as a church, and it's really to see flourishing in our community. And this isn't something new. This isn't something that just kind of Icon said, hey, we want to see our world, we want to see our community flourish. This is something that's been around as long as there's been an idea about God. In fact, the ancient Hebrew prophets talked about this idea of flourishing in a community, flourishing in our own worlds. In fact, they talked about in their creation narratives, these ancient Hebrew poets wrote about what it would be like to be in perfection with God. And it was a picture of human flourishing, where man had perfect relationship with God, that humanity was in perfect relationship with God, where humanity was in perfect relationship with the soil, with this earth, where humanity was in perfect relationship one to another. And they had this language for this in their creation narrative, and they talked about this, and they called it a garden. They talked about this garden that was flourishing, and humanity lived in this garden with one another and with God, and everything and everyone flourished. And this garden had a name. They called this garden Eden. And it was this picture of human flourishing in our world. It was a picture of all things being right. You see, but something happened. These ancient Hebrew prophets looked around at the world and they said, we're not there, right? They saw destruction. They saw violence. They saw greed. They saw shame. And they said, that's not the way it ought to be. And I think all we would have to do is look at the news, watch what's happening around our world, look in our own community and see things aren't as they ought to be. Am I right? You see, we left Eden, and the ancient Hebrew prophets and how they wrote about this is they said that they left Eden and they moved east of Eden. And ever since then, we as humanity have been east of Eden. We've been apart from perfect human flourishing the way it was intended to be. And for the rest of human history, humanity has been searching for Eden ever since. The ancient Hebrew authors and scholars wrote about this. In fact, the rest of the Hebrew scriptures is basically just stories of how people were searching for Eden. Stories of how humanity had broken relationship with God. Stories of how humanity had broken relationship with one another. And they talked about this, and throughout the Hebrew scriptures, it was stories of maybe a king that would come, and the king would start doing right in the eyes of the Lord. This king would start to bring human flourishing to his kingdom, and then another king would come along and would seek for vengeance, and would be greedy, and would be shameful, and do things that would lead the community away from human flourishing. You see, and we continue to get this, but then there were, in the Hebrew scriptures, there was these kind of like pockets of prophecies Throughout all of these stories of things going forward and things going backwards and 2 steps forward and 1 backward, there would be these snapshots of what it might be like to have human flourishing on this earth. There were these stories that would be told, these kind of predictions of what it might be if one were to come and to bring human flourishing, to bring this garden, in a sense, back to earth. And then we have Jesus show up on the scene. And Jesus shows up and he begins to communicate that we've missed it. You see, for so long, these people thought that one day everything would be made right. All of a sudden, then we escape and get out of here, and then things would be perfect, right? And many Christians, their theology is full of a belief that our goal is just to get off this place, right? Have you ever heard this before? Maybe growing up in church like I did. The goal is to escape earth, get out of here. If we can just let this thing burn and we're going to all go to heaven and everything's going to be perfect and let this earth burn. See, the problem with that is that's not the picture that Jesus gives us. That's not what Jesus communicates to us. You see, Christians actually get their theology wrong when they think the goal is to leave this earth and escape to another place where all is right. Jesus showed us that the goal is to bring Eden back to earth. The goal is to create a garden here on earth. It's why Jesus, when he was teaching his followers to pray, said, pray that my kingdom come, or your kingdom come, God, on earth as it is in heaven. That human flourishing, the way things ought to be, may that be true here and now. You see, when Jesus talked about this, he said, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven is upon us. It's here. We have the opportunity to create human flourishing here on earth. And Jesus declared that that's why he was here. One of his followers, John, he quoted Jesus as Jesus saying this. Jesus speaking, I have come so that they may have and enjoy life and have it in abundance to the full till it overflows. Jesus is saying, this is why I've come, so that there might be human flourishing here on earth. And then Jesus talked about this in one of his most famous sermons, the Sermon on the Mount. It's actually a sermon that we're going to be spending an entire series talking about in the coming weeks. It was all about this. It was about what the kingdom of God looks like here on earth. He spoke to this. And in fact, he did again, actually at his very first sermon. Jesus was a traveling itinerant rabbi, and he would travel around with his followers, and as he would get into a synagogue, tradition was that the traveling rabbi showing up, he would get to read the scroll. He would get to give the first sermon. So Jesus shows up at this synagogue early in his ministry, his very first public sermon. And as this traveling itinerant rabbi, they kind of give him the floor, and Jesus goes over and he takes from the Hebrew scriptures, he goes to the scrolls. And he finds this scroll from Isaiah, and he gets out the scroll of Isaiah, one of those prophecies that spoke to a future time. And as Jesus opens it up, he finds a place. He looks for a specific place as he reads and declares what his ministry is about. And this is what he reads. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. He says, today this has been made true for you. See, Jesus was saying he came to this world to show us what it looks like. And then his whole earthly ministry is communicating what human flourishing looks like, what it looks like to follow him. And he gets his disciples, his followers together, and he says, I want to show you how this works. I want to show you kind of what this is going to look like. You see, they had 613 commands that they had to follow. And at different points, people would ask Jesus, well, which one's most important? And he would talk about it. But then Jesus does something new. And he says, listen, I realize that you've got all of these commands, right? Well, I want to give you a new one. And I can imagine his followers are like, awesome. Yeah, because 613 wasn't enough. But thank you, Jesus. Yeah, let's go ahead. One more. Let's just tack it on there. And Jesus says, this is the most important one. He says this. He says, a new command I give you. Love one another. And I imagine his disciples at the beginning were like, well, Jesus, we've heard this before, right? Like, love one another. Yeah. And Jesus goes, no, I'm not done. Hold on. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. what is the distinguishing mark, or rather what should be the distinguishing mark of a follower of Jesus? Is it, being in the right denomination? Is it saying the right things at a time of conversion? Is it baptism? Like, what is the thing that this world will know that we're Christians? Because we show up to church every Sunday. That's how the world's going to know we're Christians. No. Jesus says the mark of you being a follower of mine is that you would love other people as you have seen me love others. And the disciples knew in that moment, as they had lived with Jesus and watched him love, what that must look like for them. And for us, if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus today, if you consider yourself a Christian, your life should be marked by that very thing. Loving one another, loving others as Jesus showed us how to love. In fact, when he left his ministry, when he left this world, and he kind of gave this mission to the church, as he gave this mission to his early followers, he gave them that mission. He said, hey, I've got this commission, something that as Christians we know as the Great Commission. The end of his life, one of his followers, Matthew, kind of records this Great Commission, and it's found here in Matthew 28. God authorized and commanded me to commission you. So this is Jesus speaking to his followers. He's about to leave, right? So if you're about to leave someone, you're like giving the most important information. The first time you're like leaving your kids home alone, you're like, listen, the police number is here. This is my cell phone number. You're telling them the most important things. As I walk out of the door, here's what's most important. Remember this. Go out and train everyone you meet, far and near, in this way of life. The question is, which way of life? What was that way of life that we just talked about? This way of love. Marking them by baptism, the threefold name, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Then instruct them in the practice of all I've commanded you. What did he command them to do? To love. Jesus is saying, if we do this, we get to create human flourishing here on earth. And this is our mission as a church. You hear us say it all the time. Listen, our mission here at Icon is we want to help people become more like Jesus. What was Jesus like? He said, if you've seen me act, you've seen my Father act. His life's mission was to love. To bring people into that fold, was to go out to the margins where the people were excluded and to bring them into his kingdom. And here as a church, that should be our mission. That should be our goal, what we want to accomplish as well. Unapologetically, I want this. I want as many people as possible to hear this, but not just hear it, to come to know this. And not just to really know it, but to really live this out. See, I want this room to grow. I've talked to some people and they're like, oh, so you just want your church to grow. You just care about numbers, huh? I'm like, in one sense, yeah. Because every single number is a person, right? Like every single person, they have a story. And every single person matters to God. And if someone matters to God, they better matter to us, right? So we want this place to grow. We want more and more people to hear this message. Years ago when we started Icon Church, we met at a little wedding venue, Texas Old Town, on the other side of the highway here. And I remember one of the very first things we talked about, in one of the very first messages, we talked about this idea. What if Icon Church could be a gathering of people that really made an impact on our community? That we really loved people the way Jesus did. That we really went out of our way to serve one another and love one another and care for one another. We talked about crazy things like, what if we lived so much like Jesus that we had an impact on high school graduation rates? Right? Like, what if so many people said, I want to mentor someone, I want to tutor someone, I want to show someone the kind of love that Jesus has showed every single one of us? What if we did that so much that we could actually help graduation rates? What if we made such an impact that, like the foster care system in this county, what if we could shut it down because there were so many families that said, you know what, I'll foster a child, I'll create a space for a child that doesn't have a home right now in this season? What if we made that kind of impact? You see, that is a picture of human flourishing. That's what we set out to do. And years ago when we started Icon Church, that was our mission. And to this day, it's still our mission. But something interesting happened about 3 years ago. In fact, almost exactly 3 years ago right now, we realized that where we were at was not going to get us to where we needed to be. We realized that we needed to make a bigger impact on our community, and we looked around at rising land rates and prices going up and the rate at which this community was growing. We were meeting at a school in San Marcos, and we realized, man, we got to get out in front of this thing. We need to be able to kind of put our flag down. We need to be able to say that like Icon Church has like a physical home that we can gather in and grow within. And 3 years ago, we started a financial capital campaign to do that very same thing. And it was called For Our City. And 3 years ago, people jumped on board and said, you know what? I'll give so that I can create space for some future person to show up. And it's so awesome right now to like look around the room and see faces, because I see particular faces of people that gave to this initiative to be in this room right now. But what's probably even cooler than that is to look around this room and to see countless faces that weren't here then, that you came to Icon Church since we got into this building here. See, you are the faces, you are the names that we prayed for when we gave to this campaign, when it was a pipe dream, when there was no chance of getting into a building like this. People stepped up in faith and said, I'll give to that, believing that somehow it's going to happen. I'll never forget, after a service one Sunday, a group of us drove out here to this building. And we saw that the condition that it was in, we saw how rough it was, and we actually went around. In fact, underneath the carpet here, underneath the floors in there, and the floors out there, people wrote down prayers for you. They wrote down names of people they wanted to see come in this space. They wrote down the names of their own children that they wanted to see grow up here at Icon Church. You see, we are here today because of the faith and the faithfulness of those people that gave towards this capital campaign. But we knew it was a tall order. Because I'm telling you, this building, it looks great now, but when we got in here, to say it was rough was an understatement. One of the first things we did, again, we wanted to put our flag down. Once we got the permission to be in here, once we signed the paperwork, and this was now the new future home of Icon Church, we wanted the world to know we're moving into this space. So we put a big old sign on the outside. We wanted everyone to know that drove by I-35, that Icon Church was coming, that this was our new home. There was one small problem. It was in really rough shape. Like the auditorium where we're at now was a little rough, right? Like it was, I'm telling you, this thing had to be stripped to the bones. It was in such rough shape. The elevator right over there wasn't an elevator. It was just a hole with some drywall over it. I kid you not, the elevator that is in there sat underneath a tarp over here, right? I don't know if you know how elevators work, not how they work, right? Like it was in such bad shape. We had to paint the entire building. We had to put new floors in everywhere. I mean, it took so much investment. The lobby, we needed to make investments in the lobby. I mean, it was just so plain. So we upgraded. We wanted, as soon as people came in, we wanted people to know that they're welcome here. That nobody is perfect, but anything is possible. We wanted them to come in and to see that their kids were going to be well cared for. We wanted them to be taken care of, their needs to be taken care of. We invested and built out Mission Coffee. We wanted people to come in and to learn about missions, to learn about, different things going on around this world. We wanted people to be able to have good coffee to enjoy while they're here at Icon, to have a little breakfast if they weren't able to get some when they were running out of the house. But we knew it was more than that. We had to, the kids' spaces were in rough shape, so we needed to invest in the kids' areas. So we painted and designed over in what is now our pre-K area. At that time, all we had were those 4 pre-K classrooms and 1 nursery. And we realized that those spaces, they were so plain, they were so bland. We wanted kids to come in and love coming to church. So we had to design those classrooms and make them look engaging for kids. We wanted to, like Amanda said, we wanted to invest the best in the next generation. But then we noticed something. We realized that we had 4 kids' classrooms. One of those classrooms, there'd be some Sundays that we would have 22-year-olds in one room, also known as hell. It's not a win, right? Like that is not a win ever, right? So we realized that wasn't enough room for the amount of kids we had, so we needed to expand our kids' spaces. So what we just finished just a few months ago is our brand new E-Kids wing that we built out. It was this giant racquetball room thing, right? Like it was nothing. And then because of the team, because of so many people that gave towards For Our City, we were able to put in 2 brand new kids' classrooms, design them for our older elementary-aged kids, theme them for them that they would have their own space that would be good for them. And the reason we were able to do this is because so many people said, yes, I want to see my community flourish. And yes, to do that, they're going to need to hear this message of Jesus. And if they're going to hear this message of Jesus, they've got to show up. They've got to come here. They've got to hear this message somehow. But when we did all of this, we knew there were kind of 4 phases. We needed to get into the building. We needed to make the initial improvements to the auditorium and the lobby. Then we needed to, design out the e-kids spaces, build the brand new e-kids wing. But then there was this 4th and final phase. It's kind of been always looming on the background, this final step that we need to take to really make this the kind of church that we need it to be able to reach more and more people. You see, this is something that if you come to second service, you probably experience on a regular basis. Between 3 services, we average on Sunday morning between 450 and about 500 people every week. And we have 78 parking spaces legally, right? Like, clearly, we don't have enough parking for the amount of people that show up every week, especially on a big Sunday or on Easter. It just gets insane. We're parking people in the grass, and it's the spring in Texas, and it rains, and it gets muddy. Like, we've had people pull into our parking lot, not have a parking space for them, and leave the church. And we want to say as a church, we're not okay with that. So we decided we need to build more parking so that we can create space for these people. You could put it this way. We need to create more spaces. Oh, this is such a pastor thing to do. So that we can reach more faces, right? I get it. I know it rhymes. I know it's cheesy. But here's the deal. I'm doing this so that hopefully you can laugh at me a little bit and maybe you can remember, right? That we need to create more spaces so that we can reach more faces. We need to build a parking lot. We need to add on to our current existing parking so we have room for new people to come in. No longer do we want anyone to pull in and see there's not room for me. Listen, I'm out of here. So we have a plan that's already been approved by the city to double our parking. We will effectively be able to double the amount of parking that we currently have. The plans are drawn and done. We are ready to go. We just need to be able to pull the trigger on this. And it's a big process. Not only is it asphalt, but we got to do curb work and green space and parking lot lights. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into this. To do this entire project will cost us about $150,000. And this is that final step of what we need to raise for the For Our City initiative and campaign. And here's the deal. We need you to come on board. So I've got a question. Here's the deal. There's some people in this room, like my wife, Kelly, and I have done. We've already made pledges to For Our City. For the past 2.5 years, we've been giving so that we can see all of these things happen. And there's many of you that are doing that same thing. But there's more of you that have not had the opportunity to do this very thing, to create space for someone new. You see, there's people here that get to celebrate, like me, these awesome new people that have come to Icon since we've gotten in here. Now let's come together once again to finish this campaign out. So I've got a question. Would you give towards one space to help us reach one more face? Would you buy, in a sense, would you sponsor one parking space? Would you do that? Would you give to bring one more space for someone? See, because what we want to do is we want to see our community flourish. And we've got to create space for those people. So we're asking every single person to sponsor. Would you consider sponsoring one spot? If you can't sponsor one, there's a way to sponsor half a spot or a quarter of a spot. And if we all come together, we can do this. But we realize to reach these people and to really serve these people, to build community, we need more than just parking spaces. We need to engage more. So behind the scenes, we've been working on multiple projects behind the scenes that no one's aware of yet, that we're going to get to announce today, that have been happening, that we've been preparing for, so that this can kind of be a multi-pronged approach, so we can increase engagement and serving in our community. And just one of those steps is something that we're releasing today, that we're announcing today. After a lot of hard work behind the scenes, we're releasing a brand new Icon app that you can have on your phones with you. This has been something that has been so much work that's put into this. This will be able to increase our engagement with all of you. This isn't really anything, it's not bad for someone who's not here at Icon, but really this isn't for guests. This is for people that you're a part of Icon Church. And I could go through all the specifics, but just in lieu of time, I want you guys to check out this quick video. Been a ton of work that's gone into building this app and creating this app. And here's the deal. I want to recognize someone who this was really their brainchild, and they really designed this app and created this app, and that's our executive pastor, Steve Cochran. I don't know where Steve is at. Is Steve in here? Can we give Steve a huge round of applause? He's done a phenomenal job. I guess since he worked so hard, he's not working right now. He's like, listen, I'm done with the app. I get like a week off. I don't know what it is. But Steve did an incredible job. In fact, there were multiple things that he wanted this app to do that our developer said, oh yeah, it can't do that. And if you know Steve at all, that's like just a dare, right? That's a challenge to Steve, and he made it happen. It's phenomenal. So here's what I want you to do. If you're a part of Icon Church, if you're a regular here, this will help us increase engagement. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I want you to actually get out your phone and text, and it should be all one word, Icon app, to this number, 77977. Now here's the deal. It'll auto-correct and separate Icon app, and if you do that, the download link will not work. So you can do all caps, and then that way it won't separate it. But if you text all one word, Icon app, just like you see it, 77977, it will download, send you a link to download the app, whether in the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. You can also search for it in those stores. Search Icon Church, look for our app in there. There actually is another Icon Church that planted somewhat recently, I guess, in Washington State, and they beat us to the punch with the app. So there's two in there, so make sure to find ours. But download that, and here's what it'll do. It'll allow us to increase engagement. Now, one of the things that's available there when you first download the app is to allow notifications. This is a great tool for us to communicate one to another. I want to encourage you, go ahead and allow that, and then it will give you categories like events, church news, e-kids, youth, young adults, and you can select the categories you're interested in. So if you have young kids, you can select e-kids and different things going on, whether it's child dedications or whatever, you can get information about that. If you have kids in the youth group, it'll notify you when youth events are happening here at Icon. It's just a great way to stay connected. There are tools that you can, if you have kids, you can actually check in your kids before you show up, so you can avoid a little bit of the line. There's different ways to sign up for different events coming up. In fact, if you go to the events page, you can find out about some events that I was just looking this morning that we haven't even announced yet. So you can find out what's going on. It's just a great way to stay connected. Another tool that's built into this is it's allowing us to add a completely new giving platform. And this will help so many things. This new giving platform streamlines a lot of things. It's a lot more robust of a system. There's a simple way that you can check your giving history that includes everything instead of just kind of waiting for the giving statements that we send out for charitable giving. There are just so many helpful tools built in that adding this new giving platform will be hugely helpful. How you get to it is there's just a give button on the bottom corner. So when you give on Sunday, instead of texting, instead of dropping something in the offering bucket, all you have to do is open your app, tap that give button, and it'll bring you to this page. You fill in the information, and you're done. It's really simple. One thing, you should have gotten an email already. If you're set up for recurring giving, where you've automated the important, you automatically give every week or every month to Icon, You've received an email to switch over your recurring giving off of the old system to the new system. If you haven't done that yet, I encourage you to do that today. If you need help with that, just go stop by the info center. They can explain how to do that, or you can always email us here and we can kind of walk you through that. But what this will do is this is just one more thing to help us kind of bring all of these things together so we can see better flourishing. Because what we want to see is we want to see people that are loosely connected to Icon get tightly connected. This is an opportunity that you can sign up to serve here at Icon. You can sign up to join a small group. It creates better communication. These tools will help us in so many ways. And what we decided to do is for us to really be a church that's for our city, for generations to come, in order to set ourselves up for success so that we can reach more and more people, that we can communicate this mission and this message of love, is that we need to grow this space. To do that, we need to be better connected one to another. We need to have a closer relationship and join small groups and, find ways to serve within here in Icon. And all of these things are different prongs that we'll be hitting in the coming months that we'll be talking about. But this is really important. I wanted to let you guys to be the first ones to know. Also, if you wouldn't mind, if you download the app, you can go ahead and leave a review. That'll help kind of other people find it. But here's what we're doing. Really today, the main thing that we want to focus on is getting that parking lot built. Now here's the thing. I get it. It's a parking lot. It's like asphalt and paint, and it's nothing that's real exciting. But to me, what is exciting is to think about the people that will allow to come into this room, and to hear this message of love, to hear them get challenged to do what you've already done. So we want to ask everyone here, would you consider sponsoring a spot? The host teams are going to come down the aisles now, and they've got these commitment cards that look like this. And we're asking every single person consider this. See, there's some people in this room that have already made for our city commitments, and you're already giving towards this cause. And if you've already made a commitment, you can continue to do so. They'll go ahead and start passing out the cards now so that you can take a look at them. If you came with someone, talk to someone about this. But there's tons of people in this room that you've never had an opportunity to make a commitment for our city, to make a commitment so that you can help be a part of the ones that are creating space for more faces to come in. You're creating opportunities to hear a message of flourishing. And I get it. There's some people in this room that you can't pledge to, between now and December, give enough to cover one spot. I get it. $1,000 a spot. I understand that might be too much for some people in this room. Maybe you can say, well, I can do a quarter of a spot, or I can do half of a spot, and then coming together and two people doing a quarter of a spot here and one person doing a quarter of a spot there, we can get that spot covered for that person. But there's also people in this room that you've got the ability, you can cover more than one spot. And we're going to need that. We're going to need every single person engaging. There are some people in this room that you could cover maybe 5 spots. Maybe there's some people that say, I could do 10 spots. If we all come together and can do this. Because here's the deal. There's nobody that can sit here and say, I can cover the whole thing. I can stroke a $150,000 check. I got this thing covered. Unless if you can. If you are in this room, come talk to me. I'd love to meet you, right? Like, I'm not going to stop you. Don't get me wrong. But how this is going to happen is going to happen by a lot of us coming together. A quarter of a spot here, a spot there, a couple spots there. And as we all come together, we'll get to do this together. Man, and it would be a dream come true to watch us get to the end of 2019 and say, we did it. We got into the building. We made all the upgrades. We added the e-kids wing. We added parking. We were able to accomplish exactly what we intended to do. See, this was a pipe dream a few years ago. And now we are on the final stretch. It has been a marathon. And this is the final stretch, that home stretch. So I want to encourage you to pray about what God might be speaking to you. To make this pledge, we're not asking you to give this right now in this offering. This is a pledge between now and 2019 to see this commitment through. So it might be $50 a month. It might be $100 a month. It might be a little bit here. Maybe you break it up. It's however you can do it. But this is just a pledge. All it is a commitment saying, I commit between now and the end of December 2019 to give this much towards for our city so that we can create more spaces to reach more faces. So we can see our community truly flourish. We can bring this message of hope. That we can bring this message of love to a community that desperately needs it. As we look about our world and say it is not as it ought to be. This is our chance to bring a little bit more flourishment, to bring a little bit of heaven down to earth. Amen? Let me pray for you, and then the band will play one final song.